On the scorched rim of a dying planet, a lone human thought love had died with the stars. Until two alien girls appeared, carrying a pendant that whispered the name he swore he'd never say again. The sky over Rekka 9 was always bruised, a tired shade of ash and rust that never quite turned to night. Winds howled across the fractured valley like old machines dying slow, their song caught between memory and metal. Commander Corin Vale stood at the edge of his solar ranch, wrench in one hand, dust coating the sleeves of his worn mechanic suit. His plasma drill hissed once, then sputtered into silence. Another blown coil, another reason to give up. He grunted and kicked the old converter pipe. Sparks flared, fizzled. He was turning back toward the workshop when he saw them. Two small figures stood just outside the force fence, barefoot, covered in ash. Skin shimmered with a faint opal hue, blue-violet. Not full alien, not fully human either. They couldn't have been older than 6, identical. One held a cracked satchel. The other clutched something glowing faintly at her chest, and both were staring directly at him, unblinking. Corin froze. The taller girl stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. "Are you the man who smells like thunder and remembers her name in every storm?" His stomach turned. No one had said that phrase in years. No one alive. He blinked hard, words caught behind his teeth.
What did you say?"
The younger one pulled the satchel open and took out a palm-sized locket, a fusion metal crescent inscribed in old Virellan runes. The exact same locket he'd once carved a name into during the war. For someone he lost. The girl stepped closer. The older pressed her palm to the locket. It beeped once, scanned the air, a soft hum echoed. And then a voice played, garbled, broken, but unmistakably hers. "If you ever find him, tell him I remember the scent of rain on his armor, the way he called me Starfire, even when I couldn't remember my own name. Tell him. My heart still waits." The voice clicked off. Corin staggered back a step like he'd been shot in the gut. His knees bent slightly, one hand grabbing the post beside him for balance. "No," he muttered. "No, this can't be real." The older girl spoke again. "She told us you'd be here. She said if anything ever happened, we should find the man who smells like thunder. And sings to machines," the younger finished, voice shaking. He dropped his wrench. It clanged against the dirt. Corin slowly walked toward them, one heavy step at a time. Up close they had her eyes, golden-ringed irises like twin sun flares, something no full human could ever carry. One had a faint scar above her eyebrow, the kind only gotten from learning to crawl on old metal floors. The other held the locket tight like it was her soul. His voice cracked. What's your name?" "Orin," said the first, raising her chin. "Jexy," said the second, peeking from behind. Corin knelt slowly, knees creaking under years of weight and war and grief. His hand, rough from tools and scars, hovered over the locket. "May I?" he asked. Jexy nodded. He pressed the locket open. Inside, a pressed violet blossom from the forests of Velmora, the world where he last saw her. And opposite it, a name, etched by his own hand years ago. Saphira. He felt like the air had vanished. 5 years ago, Saphira Vale, bioengineer, half-alien rebel, and the only being he ever loved, was consumed during the collapse of the hive mind on Velmora. Her body was never found. Only wreckage, burned out neural banks and fragments of her last signal. He'd buried her memory. Deep. And now her daughter stood before him. He looked up at them, then past them, as if half expecting her to walk out of the dust and finish the joke. But nothing came. Just wind, and the quiet hum of the twin stars above. "Come inside," he said hoarsely. He opened the gate. The girls followed. The inside of his solar cabin was quiet, lit by a flickering lantern core. Dismantled bots lay on the shelves. Scorch marks lined the wall from experiments gone wrong. Corin poured purified water into chipped tin cups, set down 2 protein biscuits. The girls sat cautiously, no fear. Just quiet observation, like they were waiting to see what he'd do. He sat across from them, hands folded, and for a long time no one said a word. Then Orin placed the satchel on the table and slid it toward him. Inside were a hair braid, her braid, from Saphira's final mission. A torn patch of his old commander emblem, one he gave her when they made their pact, and a cracked data core pulsing dimly. He stared at it. Recognized the code etched along the side. Locked to my DNA, he muttered. Only opens if I touch it? Jexy tilted her head. Mama said you'd know what to do. She couldn't bring it with her, but she hid the rest inside. Inside where? Oren pointed at the locket. It has part of her brain map. Before the hive took it. Corin went still. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling as if the stars might give him answers. If Saphira had time to scan her pre-assimilation memories, and somehow stored them inside a voice locket. That meant she knew she might forget everything but not him. He reached for the data core, pressed his thumb into the reader. The room lit up with a soft hologram. Saphira's face appeared. Weaker, thinner, but real. Corin, if you're seeing this, I'm probably dead. Or worse, my daughters. They deserve better. I couldn't let the hive take all of me, so I fragmented the rest, hid it in code. My mind may go, but please, bring them somewhere safe. Tell them who I was. And Corin, if there's a fragment of me left, follow it. I left a trace. The projection faded. Corin's jaw clenched. I thought she was dead, he whispered. I saw the wreckage. I buried a marker. She's not dead, Oren said, eyes fierce. She's waiting. Jexy crawled into his lap without asking. Corin flinched, but he didn't push her away. Instead, he rested one calloused hand on her shoulder. Then we find her, he said quietly. Even if it means going back into the dead zones. Oren slid the cracked pendant toward him. The light flickered blue. Mama said you'd say that. Outside, the wind picked up again, but this time, it didn't howl. It sang, like machines waking up after a long sleep. And deep inside the man who had given up on ever holding anything worth saving again, a spark reignited. The sky over Reckonine never changed. Too broken, too tired, like a wound the planet had stopped trying to heal. But inside Corin Vale's forgotten outpost, something had shifted. Hope. The kind that scraped when it moved. The kind that hurt more than silence. He sat at the steel workbench, the cracked hive memory core glowing faint blue under the desk lamp. Across from him, Oren and Jexy huddled under a thermal blanket, watching him through sleepy eyes, but refusing to sleep, as if afraid he might vanish. He wouldn't. Not now. Not after that voice. Not after those eyes. He turned the memory core over, pressing a palm scanner to the side. A soft pulse responded, verifying identity. Green light. Accepted. The core split open with a hiss. Dozens of tiny fractalized memory crystals shimmered inside, held in quantum stasis, alive, frozen, impossible. A technology only Saphira could have built. No one else in the system knew how to encode neural strands like that. It was her, all of it, scattered fragments of a mind that once danced with galaxies and whispered code like lullabies. Corin exhaled slowly. Your mama, he whispered to the air, was a miracle before the universe knew it needed one. Jexy yawned. Can she be fixed? His chest tightened. I don't know, kiddo. But if she left me this, she wanted to be found. He connected the hive core to his spliced interpreter rig, a clunky machine made from old war salvages, bio-wire, and parts of his retired exosuit. The screen flickered, glitched, then resolved into lines of visual code, shimmering pulses of thought, sensation, memory. Then came her voice again. Softer this time, fragile. The hive was supposed to rewrite me, but I cut deeper than they could reach. Corin, I remember rain. I remember your hand on mine. I remember the night we lit the stars above Vel Mora with nothing but a stolen battery and a promise. If I'm not me when you find me, await. Somewhere inside, I'm still holding on. The screen froze. So did Corin. He pressed a hand over his mouth, closed his eyes. Oren reached up and touched his arm. He opened his eyes. We're going to find her. Oren nodded like she already knew. By morning, the solar wind had picked up, tearing across the valley, scattering dust over his old Ranger cruiser, half buried beneath years of silence. Corin stepped out in his patchworked jacket, holding a repulsor drill in one hand, towing a field case in the other. Jexy, he called. Check the coolant levels. She perked up, then paused. I don't know how. Then now's the perfect time to learn. She scampered over. Oren climbed the access ladder to the turret array, just as Saphira once had. She didn't flinch at the height like mother, like daughter. Corin slid under the belly of the cruiser, sparks flying as he rebuilt the starter panel. The girls worked beside him for hours, asking questions, passing tools, laughing softly. There was something healing in it, quiet, real. It made the ache in his chest feel useful again. By sundown, the cruiser's engines screamed to life, a deep-throated growl that shook the sand loose from the walls. The lights pulsed. Systems online. Corin wiped his face with his sleeve. Still got it, he muttered. Where are we going? Oren asked from the cockpit stairs. He looked at her. Zone 9. Jexy frowned. That's where she disappeared, right? He nodded once. And the only place the hive mind ever collapsed. If her last signal came from there, it's where we start. Oren swallowed hard. People say that place eats souls. Corin crouched beside her. Then we bring each other back. Deal? She hesitated and then nodded. Jexy copied her. Corin packed supplies. Nutrient kits, memory stabilizers, flare pods, 2 old blasters, and 1 wrapped flute Saphira once played when words felt too sharp. He didn't know why he took it. Only that it had waited long enough. That night, under an alien moon that flickered like a dying bulb, the girls curled up inside the cruiser's cabin. Corin stood at the doorway staring at the horizon. A storm brewed far off, a hive storm sick with static. The same kind that haunted his dreams for years. The kind that whispered she's gone. He didn't believe it anymore, not after those eyes, not after the locket. He slid the captain's chair back and powered the nav console. The map lit up, jagged, glitching. Most of Zone 9 was off-grid, forgotten. Radiation blooms, rogue AIs, malfunctioned warbots scavenging for movement, graveyard, and maybe a miracle. The next day they launched at dawn. Dust whipped over the cruiser's rear thrusters. As they blasted free from the canyon, the girls squealed with excitement, the horizon rushing toward them. For them, this was the first time the world moved under their feet. For Corin, it was the first time in years he had moved toward anything worth reaching. Where'd you get that ship? Jexy asked, her cheek pressed to the window. Corin smiled faintly. Built it with your mom, piece by piece. Same year we fell in love. She picked the paint color. Rust? Oren teased. She said it looked honest. They laughed, then fell quiet. The cruiser soared past broken satellite spires and crushed relay towers. Each was a ghost of the war, each a reminder of what he failed to save. Then, like a knife through stillness, a red light blinked on the nav board. Ping detected, not random, not ambient, but coded A. Saphira coded fragment, buried beneath the dunes of Delta. Hollow, the dead center of Zone 9. Corin leaned forward. She left a signal trail. The ping echoed again, then stopped. Jexy whispered, Was that? Her Corin didn't answer. He was already changing course. Hours later, the cruiser hovered over Delta Hollow, a cratered stretch of land where the hive once ruled. Wind screamed between broken spires of black metal. Hive roots, those awful tentacle-like conduits, still twitched in the dust, echoing the last reflexes of a dead AI god. The girls huddled beside him. He wrapped an arm around both. This is the part where most turn back, he said quietly. But not us, Oren replied. He nodded. Not us. They stepped out, the sand crunched under their boots. Static popped in the air. Every instinct in Corin's body screamed to run, row, but something deeper pulled him forward, toward the signal, toward her. Jexy found it first, a small node buried beneath rubble. Blinking faintly, Corin knelt, cleared the sand, and touched the core. A projection snapped to life. Saphira, tired, hurt, but alive. Corin, if you made it this far, I knew you would. I don't know who I'll be when you find me, but please bring the twins somewhere safe. If the hive still echoes in me, remind me who I was, who I loved, who I still am. The projection glitched out. Jexy whispered, Where is she now? Corin activated the last marker in the node. Coordinates appeared, not far. A few sectors east. Sanctuary 47, a rehab colony for hive war survivors. No one ever came back from there. Corin stood slowly. She's alive, Oren gripped his jacket. You're sure? He didn't hesitate. Yes. As the wind howled around them and the sky crackled with electric ghosts, Corin looked down at the 2 lives Saphira entrusted to him, and swore an oath he hadn't spoken since the war. I protect what matters, even if it kills me. He loaded them into the cruiser, set coordinates, and they flew, not away from danger, but toward love, toward memory, toward the woman who once said, "If I forget everything, please, just remind me how I made you feel." The sky above Sanctuary 47 was gray, not storm gray, not dust gray, but the cold, colorless gray of systems that had stopped believing in color. Altogether, the outpost was a skeleton, an old repurposed hive pod with broken panels stitched, over by human hands and overgrown alien. Flora, quiet, still, the kind of place where even echoes forgot how to echo. Corin Vales. Cruiser landed with a soft thud on the gravel lot. Outside the colony's perimeter, Oren and Jexy pressed their faces to the viewport. Neither spoke, neither needed to. They all felt it. The air here was thick, not just with radiation or hive residue, but with the residue of grief. The type that couldn't be cleaned by tech, only time and love. Corin powered down the thrusters and turned in his seat. You don't leave the ship unless I say, understand? Oren nodded immediately. Jexy hesitated. But what if she remembers us? Corin looked at her for a long moment. Then I'll bring her out, she swallowed. Promise? His hand brushed her hair back gently. Promise. He stepped out alone. The wind tasted of iron and static, sharp, unfinished. A sensor tower blinked weakly overhead. No guards, no sentries, no gates, just a sign, half-rusted, S-47, Neuro Recovery Outpost, entry by permission. Only Corin walked up the path, boots crunching softly. An old woman stepped from the shadows near the main hatch. Silver hair tied tight, arms crossed over a scarred lab coat. She didn't blink at the sight of his blaster, or his eyes. You came from Recca 9, she said, voice dry. Not many bother leaving that dust pit. I'm looking for someone. Her head tilted. Everyone here is someone. A woman. Hybrid. Recovered from hive trauma. 5 years ago. Name might be Saphira. The woman's face shifted. Not in surprise, but recognition. She looked down. Thought. Then stepped aside. Follow me. The inside of Sanctuary 47 was strange. Not like a hospital. More like an abandoned greenhouse with biolights, recycled air, soft music from speakers that had long since broken their tone regulators. People moved like ghosts, hollow-eyed, muttering. Some stared at walls. Others hugged themselves. Every soul in here had once heard the hive's whisper. Every one of them had walked out of the fire, but left parts behind. The woman led him down a narrow hallway, through a side door, to a room that smelled faintly of lavender and ozone. Inside, a bed, a small table, a sketchbook, and her, Saphira Vale, alive but not whole. She sat upright, legs tucked under her, braids shorter now, uneven. Her frame was thinner, her back straighter, and her eyes, not gold anymore, paler, like dawn trying to remember sunlight. She was humming to herself, fingers tapping a melody Corin once taught her, a rhythm that always made her laugh. She didn't look up when he stepped inside, didn't flinch, didn't scream, just kept humming. The nurse gently stepped back, whispering, she doesn't always remember things clearly. Or people or herself. Corin nodded once. Leave us. She hesitated, then quietly exited. He turned back to the woman on the bed, and then, for the first time in 5 years, he said her name, aloud, Saphira. Her fingers froze. The humming stopped. She slowly lifted her head. Eyes met his. No, recognition, none. She stared for a long, slow moment, then blinked. I'm sorry, she said softly. Do I know you? He didn't answer right away, couldn't. His mouth was dry, his hands cold. I think you used to, he said. A long time ago. Her head tilted. You feel familiar, she frowned. But I don't know why. He stepped closer. You once built me a neural arm out of scrap because I refused to buy the expensive kind. She stared. You once taught me how to speak Virelin just so I Could curse properly in your dialect, still, blank. He sat on the chair beside the bed, elbows on his knees. You used to laugh at the sound of fusion storms because you said they reminded you of my snoring. A flicker, tiny but, there, her lips twitched. I don't know why. That makes sense, she whispered. But it does. Corin stared at her. She was right there, inches away and yet 1,000 miles gone. Outside, the wind screamed. The girls waited in the ship, watching, silent. Inside, Saphira picked up the sketchbook from the table and opened to a drawing, a rough pencil sketch of a man. One arm metal, eyes tired, but kind. Corin gasped. That's me. She looked at it, back at him, her voice cracked. You come to me in dreams, she said. You always say? Wait for me. She clutched the book tighter. Why do I dream about you? Corin stood, walked to the bed, kneeling in front of her. Because I never stopped waiting. Her lips parted. Tears welled at the corners of her eyes, but didn't fall. I'm broken, she whispered. I don't even know who I am anymore. He reached out, didn't touch, just hovered close enough for her to feel the warmth of his palm. You're the woman I loved, he said. The one who trusted me with her soul. And now? Now, he said gently. You have daughters waiting outside. Her breath caught. Daughters? He nodded. She stared at him, trembling now. Twins, he said. Oren, Jexy, they came looking for me. Said you told them to. Her hands flew to her mouth. No. He reached into his coat, pulled out the pendant, the one with her voice. He pressed it. Her own words played, warped, trembling. Tell him I remember the rain, the scent of fire on his skin. Tell him my heart still waits. Saphira dropped the sketchbook. Her knees pulled up, and the tears finally fell. Outside the door, 2 small hands pressed to the glass. Jexy's voice. Is that her? Corin turned, paused, then opened the door. The twins rushed in. Saphira stared at them like she was seeing angels, or ghosts, their faces, their eyes. One by one, they made the gesture, 3 fingers to heart twist, point outward. I carry you, she gasped. Her body jerked like something snapped loose inside her, and she mimicked it. 3 fingers, heart twist outward, she whispered. I taught you that. Jexy ran into her arms. Oren followed. Saphira clutched them both, sobbing now. Full, ugly, beautiful sobs. I didn't forget you, she choked. I just didn't know I remembered. Corin stepped forward. Her eyes found his. She held out one hand. Corin. He took it, soft, careful, and for the first time since the war, she said the words he thought he'd never hear again. I still love you. They stayed at Sanctuary 47 that night. No one spoke much, but no one needed to. Not anymore. Saphira rested with her daughters curled beside her, their heads against her chest, listening to the beat of a heart they were born from, even if they never heard it until now. Corin sat in the corner, watching, guarding, and finally, breathing. The storm rolled in 3 days after they returned to Rekka 9. Thunder trembled across the valley like a forgotten voice calling itself back from death. Rain, real rain, tapped against the roof of Corin Vale's solar ranch for the first time in years, seeping into soil that hadn't known softness in a long, long time. Inside, the house was quiet. A warmth had returned, not from the heaters or reactor cores, but from the sound of children breathing softly beneath weighted blankets, and the soft thrum of someone moving through the kitchen without quite remembering why. Saphira Vale stood barefoot on the floor panels, one hand gripping the edge of the counter, her breath fogging the nearby window. She didn't know what day it was, sometimes not even what year, but she knew this place. The smell of it, the faint hum in the wall that she'd once designed, herself. The way the faucet squeaked left when you turned it too hard. A flaw Corin never fixed because she said it sounded like a bird. She traced the edge of the countertop. Why? Does everything here feel like a dream I almost had? She whispered. Corin sat on the porch, boots kicked up, a tin cup of static brew cooling in his hands. He'd watched the sky darken for hours, tracking the way the storm coiled along the ridgeline. It didn't frighten him. Storms never did. Not after war. Not after Hive. not after holding death in his hands and watching it ask for forgiveness. He heard the door open behind him. Soft footsteps. Careful. Then Saphira sat down beside him, pulling the thermal shawl around her shoulders. Her hair was tied back now, unevenly. She hadn't asked him to help braid it, but he remembered how she used to prefer it loose during storms. "Is this where I used to sit?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "You'd carve patterns into the wood with a solder stick when you were mad. There's a whole constellation of burn marks under your chair." She smiled. Almost. "I still don't remember everything," she said. "Some days I wake up thinking I'm someone else. Some days I look at the girls and wonder how I created something so good." Corin set the cup down. "You don't have to remember everything," she turned to him. "Don't you want me to?" He met her eyes, pale echoes of the gold they used to be, but still hers. "I want you to feel safe," he said. "The rest can wait." She looked down. "I feel broken." He leaned forward slightly. "You survived the hive. You protected your mind with your own tech. You encoded memories into crystal just so someone might find you. Saphira, you were never broken, just interrupted." The wind howled against the cabin walls. Thunder cracked. Saphira flinched, then closed her eyes. "When it's quiet, I hear your voice," he blinked. "My voice?" "In the back of my head," she whispered. "Saying, 'Hold on, Starfire,' that name. I don't even know why it makes me want to cry." He did. Because it was the first name he ever gave her. The first time she smiled like the war didn't exist. In the engine room of the old cargo freighter where they first met, he cleared his throat. "Want to hear a story?" She nodded slowly. He leaned back. "First time I saw you, you were halfway through dismantling a black site reactor with nothing but a heat knife and too much confidence. You told me to shut up and pass the ion key." She blinked. He smiled faintly. "I fell in love before you even looked at me." Saphira's hands trembled in her lap. "Did I love you back?" Corin didn't speak for a moment then. "You loved me so much it terrified you. You called me your soft system failure. The one vulnerability you never coded around." Tears welled at the edges of her lashes. "And the twins?" "You found out you were pregnant the week before Velmora fell. You told me. If anything happened, I had to make sure they remembered their mother smiled like starlight and fought like thunder." She covered her mouth, shaking. "And I left you behind? You saved them." He didn't say how she'd sent them away in a cargo drone as the hive virus tore through the city. He didn't say how long he waited. Days, weeks, digging through ruins, looking for a body he never found. She was remembering enough already. Later that night, the storm worsened. The girls were asleep, curled against each other like moons orbiting the same star. The reactor hummed low. Lights flickered. Corin was halfway through welding a torn panel when he heard it. A scream. Not human. Not alien. Just grief. Raw and unfiltered. He ran. Found her in the hallway. Barefoot, eyes wide, body convulsing. No, don't take them. Don't erase me, Cor." She collapsed to her knees. He dropped beside her. "It's me," he whispered, pulling her into his arms. "It's me." She clawed at his shirt, trembling, gasping. "They said I was gone. They said I'd forget. They said you'd never find me." "I found you," he said again and again. "I never stopped. You held on. You left me a map. You brought our daughters back to me." She broke against him, sobs ripping through her, fingers tangled in his jacket like she was trying to physically hold on to the only part of herself she still trusted. He held her there, on the floor until the storm calmed, and when the thunder faded, her breathing did too. Calm. Steady. She didn't speak again that night, but she didn't let go. In the mornings that followed, she began to return in fragments, a smile when she saw the twins using the same hand sign she once taught them, a soft hum while scrubbing the old kettle on the stove, the same melody she once played on her flute when they watched storms from the porch. One afternoon, she touched the reactor panel and whispered, "This one always leaked. You told me it made the best background noise when you tried to write." Corin turned in shock. She blinked. I remember that," he smiled. "Good." Saphira turned to him, biting her lip. "I'm still afraid. Of forgetting. Of waking up one day and not knowing you again." He walked to her, took her hand. "Then I'll remind you. Every day. With stories. With smells. with music, with our girls, until you don't need reminders anymore. She leaned forward, forehead resting against his chest. For the first time since they'd found her, she whispered, "I don't want to be lost again." "You won't be," he replied, eyes closed. "Not while I'm breathing." That night, as the storm drifted west and the stars blinked open above Rekka 9, Saphira sat on the porch with a blanket around her shoulders. Corin brought her something, a small wooden box. Inside, the flute. She gasped. "I thought it was gone." "I fixed it," he said quietly. "Thought you might want to try." She hesitated, then lifted it to her lips. The first breath was shaky. No sound came. The second, a note faint, raw, but real. She took a breath and played. A soft melody filled the desert air, broken, imperfect, but full of love. Corin sat beside her, not speaking, just listening. When the song ended, she looked at him. "I still don't remember everything." He nodded. "But this," she said, placing her hand over her heart. "This feels like home." He took her hand in both of his and replied, "That's all it has to be." The stars looked different now, clearer, brighter, like they'd been waiting for this family to come back into focus. The cruiser hummed, low as it passed over the ridgeline into the southern valley of Rekka 9, coasting gently toward the only place that had ever truly felt like home. The solar ranch tucked beside the ironwood cliffs, a red-roofed homestead that once echoed with dreams and thunderstorms. Inside, Saphira Vel sat beside Corin, hand resting atop his, eyes wide and unblinking. In the back cabin, Oren and Jexy pressed their faces to the side panels, watching the terrain shift into recognition. "This is it," Corin said softly, voice nearly swallowed by the ship's quiet. "This is where I buried your name." Saphira didn't look at him, not yet. Her eyes were fixed ahead, and then the house came into view. The porch, the barn, the wind-split gate with the old bent pole he never fixed. Her breath caught. "I've seen this place before." She didn't know when, but her heart did. When they landed, the twins burst out first. Their boots hit the dirt and they ran past the wildlight vines, past the rusted bot shed, all the way to the front door where an old carved plaque once read, "Vale Station." Now it read something else. Hand-carved. Fresh. Saphira, Oren, Jexy, Corin, welcome home. Saphira stared at it, frozen halfway down the cruiser ramp. Corin stepped beside her, silent. Her voice broke. "You changed it." "No," he said, his throat tight. "I just finished it." She reached out with trembling fingers, tracing the names like they were ancient stories etched in stone. Her daughters ran back, grabbing her hands. "Come see inside." "You used to make waffles." "Daddy tried, but his were burnt." "There's a drawer full of pictures with your face in them." Saphira laughed, a real one, and let them pull her forward. The inside of the house had changed too, but not too much. The same warm light, the same mismatched plates, the same scorched ring on the counter where she once left the soldering iron on too long. But now, there were drawings on the walls, of gliders and stars and a woman with long hair holding hands with two girls. There was a quilt, stitched with the broken constellations of Rekka 9's sky, each patch labeled with a memory. And beside the hearth, Corin had carved something new into the wood. When memory fails, love remains. They ate together that night, simple food, warm and quiet. The girls fell asleep early, wrapped together on the couch beneath an old emergency blanket that still smelled faintly of ion coils and lavender. Saphira watched them, eyes soft, fingers twitching like she wanted to reach, but was still afraid she didn't have the right. "They never forgot you," Corin said, seated beside her. "Even when you didn't know their names." "They knew yours," she swallowed. "They're incredible." "They're yours," he said simply, and then added, "And mine. Because of you." A silence passed between them. Not uncomfortable, just full. She whispered, "I missed all of this. You made it back. I still don't remember what we were." He looked at her. "You don't have to. I want to." She turned to him fully, eyes trembling with too many half-formed memories. "Tell me again. Who were we?" He reached into the side drawer and pulled out a small data crystal, slid it into the table port. A projection flickered to life. Her, laughing on the porch. Corin beside her, carrying parts of a broken engine while she threw berries at him. The girl's tiny, chasing a glider she half-built. Saphira covered her mouth. That's you. She watched it in silence, watched herself hold Corin's face in her hands, watched her press her forehead to his, watched herself say something silent and smile. When the projection faded, her voice cracked. Play it again. He did. The next morning was bright, not just from the twin sun, but from the scent of bread and warm tea and the sound of Jexy trying to explain how gravity boots are cheating in hide-and-seek. Saphira walked out of the room barefoot, hair half-brushed, shoulders wrapped in a red shawl. She found Corin in the back, repairing a damaged solar panel. He didn't hear her at first, not until she said his name. Corin. He looked up. She was holding something. The flute. I want to play again, she said, but not alone. He nodded once and reached for his old guitar, strings still cracked, but playable. And there, beneath the soft hush of morning wind and sunlight, they played, together, broken notes, off-key rhythms, but real. The girls danced in the dirt, spinning until they fell, and Saphira, the woman who had been lost to the hive, to time, to memory, us laughed free. That evening, after dinner, they all sat on the porch, Corin carving, the girls asleep at their mother's side. Saphira leaned against the doorframe, arms folded over herself. I still don't remember everything, she said. Corin didn't stop carving, okay, but... He paused. I remember how your voice felt when you said my name, she said. He looked at her. I remember lightning storms and grease and old engine oil. I remember safety and wind, and a promise that felt heavier than a ring. She stepped toward him. I don't know how or when, but I remember loving you. Corin stood, put the carving tool down, then held out his arms. No hesitation, no fear. She walked into them, and he held her like he'd never let go. Again, because he wouldn't, not in this life. Not in any. They stayed like that until the stars came, no longer strangers, no longer fragments, but whole. Even if not all at once, because love doesn't need to be perfect to be true. It just needs to be chosen, again and again. Even when memory fades, even when time breaks, even across galaxies.